You're listening to Don't Tell the Easter Bunny, a podcast celebrating the unsung festivities that won't be found on any normal calendar. This show is presented every 2 weeks by a mother-son duo who like to keep it safe for work. I'm Bryce, the son.
I'm Misty, the mom.
And you can reach out to us at Don't Tell the Easter Bunny for Instagram and Facebook, and at Don't Tell the EAS1 for Twitter.
Or you can email us at don'ttelltheeasterbunny@gmail.com. No special characters or space.
Okay, let's hop to it. Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the show. This is Bryce and Misty post-recording. As a bit of a disclaimer for this episode and the one that is following after and coming out on the same day, is that we're kind of playing around with reformatting a few things when it comes to recording the show. So actually, this is going to be a part A and a part B kind of double episode. If you are listening to part A, please go and continue into part B, which will be out as well. And then if this is part B, please go back to part A, either when you're done with this or, start from the very beginning. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to another episode of Don't Tell the Easter Bunny. We're starting off July this time, and it is part 1.
Okay, so I have 2 days. I have Compliment Your Mirror Day, July 2nd, and I have International Cherry Pit Spitting Competition Day, July 6th.
That's a mouthful. Cherry Pit
International.
Spitting.
Gotta get the international
Okay.
in there. International Cherry Pit Spitting Competition Day.
That's way too many syllables.
Yeah, I think so too. But it's a fun holiday.
Yeah, well, we'll hear more about that later. And we'll be hearing that after my days, which are World UFO Day on July 2nd, as well as Sidewalk Egg Frying Day on July 4th.
Ooh, I like the idea of the World UFO Day. Do you have any conspiracies?
There are a few conspiracies that are actually going to be talked about in my little notes that I got going on, and I know you enjoy that immensely.
Yeah. That'll be fun. I have a little bit creepiness when we get to the Compliment Your Mirror Day. All right, so normally I think I start off because usually it's the day I pick is like the first of the month, but I think we have the same day.
Yes, so we're starting off with July 2nd for both of us.
Yes, but for a change, why don't you go first?
Okay, then let's go for it.
All right.
I'll take the spotlight this time. So, like I was saying, we are going to be talking about World UFO Day, which takes place on July 2nd. And I think this is one of the better times to actually be talking about UFOs, flying saucers, and all that, because this past June, there's been a really curious amount of coverage placed on the government and the military in regards to unidentified flying objects. So it really kind of started off with the New York Times reporting at the end of May that multiple military staff members had declared that they had seen UFOs through radar or visual confirmation in recent years. So a typical report that was in the New York Times would be about the military staff seeing an appearance of an object that had no visible exhaust trail nor engine parts, moved at a dazzling speed, and rotated on its axis. Military staff mentioned a season of these objects wherein they showed up almost every day between mid-2014 until early 2015. And several cases also came complete with video footage. Like if you actually go to the New York Times article, they have a video from 2008, I think it is. It might be 2004, off of San Diego. There are 2 fighter jets pilots, and they are going and trailing this one object that looks like a spinning top that's just flying through the air really quickly, and they're having a discussion about what it is.
So has anyone disproven that it isn't like photoshopped or anything like that?
So this we'll be getting into later, because a lot of the information that we're kind of receiving now is coming out of a study that was conducted by the US government it's between 2007 to 2012. So of course that video would be fitting in with it. And they never found anything, but it is interesting because there are several cases that could not be identified with any specific phenomenon. And that goes a little bit more into another study that was conducted by the US government called Operation Blue Book. But for now, with, sticking back with after the New York Times came out with this report, more news media was putting coverage onto these military staff reports coming out, even to the point of asking President Donald Trump what he thought about it. And the president had said he had been briefed on these UFO incidents, but he actually didn't really believe too much in them. He believes that the military were definitely seeing something, but they were most likely not any kind of aircraft, and especially not related to extraterrestrial beings,
I think that comes up every presidency. They kind of talk about like the quote secrets that the presidents, pass on to the next president. And,
yeah.
And they say that the idea of Roswell or just aliens in general kind of comes up every single time, and they usually ask, publicly the presidents, but I don't think anyone's really said that they totally agree or believe in it.
Yeah. But what is interesting is that, so after Trump was asked that in the earlier part of June, in the later part of June, there's actually been a lot of senators who have been talking about, they've been getting briefed on these same exact incidences, and they're putting a little bit more interest into it. Again, they don't think it's anything to do with aliens, but they claim that, they want to go ahead and look into this information because they want national security and individual security to be okay. Because, of course, like, multiple people think that perhaps there's a lot of fatigue going on with pilots, and that they are starting to hallucinate these objects in the sky, or misinterpreting other phenomenon like lightning as being flashes of light from some kind of a spacecraft. But that's kind of like what the senators are saying. They're like, we need to focus on this research because it might be affecting the mental health of or they might be symptoms of mental health issues going on with our soldiers right now. So, in talking about all of this that's going on, World UFO Day is officially on July 2nd because it is the date of the Roswell incident in 1947. Of course, it being one of the most well-known cases of secrecy, conspiracy, aliens, flying saucers, and all that. A Roswell incident, of course, has been debunked by the government and many other institutions, third parties, saying that it is specifically related to some kind of a project where they were sending up air balloons into the sky so they could go ahead and read if any nuclear type of weapon had been used. Essentially, the technology inside of these balloons, called Project Mogul, could go ahead and read, like, from miles and miles and miles away if there were atmospheric changes that kind of show, like, oh, a giant missile is coming our way. And supposedly, this balloon happened to crash, and that is what the Roswell incident turned out to be. So World UFOs Day is to proclaim declassification of different documents by the US government and governments all across the world. There are other organizations that have other studies done by different governments all across the earth. World UFO Day and their committee, the hosts of this day, is meant specifically to declassify UFOs, flying saucers, and aliens, but also other information in general. So Wikipedia defines declassification as a process of documents that used to be classified as secret ceasing to be so restricted, often under the principle of freedom of information. So, in the US, we have the Freedom of Information Act, which was put into law in, I think it's 1962, it might be 1972. I'll get back to that later. But either way, what's interesting is that the Freedom of Information Act permits U.S. citizens to request information from any federal institution for documents related to their search, as long as it doesn't compromise certain exemptions made to protecting national security and an individual's rights or identity. Automatic declassification of documents in the U.S. will occur once 25 years have elapsed from the document's publication, so long as it is also not compromising on those exemptions, and as long as the nation archives deem it historically relevant. I just kind of wanted to talk about different examples of declassification specifically related to UFO incidences, reports, sightings, all this, testimonies that were done by the US government, because that is, the main priority of World UFO Day. So the first one that really gained ground as a research study was Project or Operation Blue Book. Have you heard of that before, Mom?
I haven't heard of that one.
I remember hearing about it, in History Channel documentaries, and whenever they would bring up aliens and UFOs, this would be something they would talk about a lot, because it is a major study that was conducted by the U.S. government's Air Force between 1952 and 1969. And it's interesting because, of course, with a declassified document, it appears on a lot of government-related websites, and one of them being the National Archives, which notes the records include approximately 2 cubic feet of unarranged project or administrative files, 37 cubic feet of case files in which individual sightings are arranged chronologically, and 3 cubic feet of records relating to the Office of Special Investigations, portions of which are arranged chronologically and by Overseas Command. But a cubic foot of records comprises about 2,000 pages. That's a lot of paper, especially when you're considering 37 cubic feet in one instance. So these pages and papers, there are 12,618 reports that were collected in this almost 2-decade span of time, and 701 of them could not be identified with anything natural or human-made.
And were these all based on supposedly the Roswell incident, or just incidents all over the world?
These incidents I don't know if they were exactly all over the world, but they were definitely within the U.S. nation. So they would be related to military coming and reporting. I believe they also reached out to also civilians. And so there were a lot of reports just in general about seeing not aliens, but, seeing flying saucers. Continuing with the National Archives quote that I got here, since Project Blue was closed, nothing has happened to indicate that the Air Force ought to resume investigating UFOs. Because of the considerable cost of the Air Force in the past and the tight funding of Air Force needs today, there is no likelihood the Air Force will become involved with UFO investigation again. So that was 1969, right? And now we're in 2019 and we're still talking about UFOs, research studies conducted by US government. But even back in, like I was saying, 2007, there was the inauguration of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, which ran from 2007 to 2012, and it did the same exact thing as Operation Blue Book, where it collected different stories and witness reports about UFOs. Its official capacity became limited after 2012, and as far as we know, was still functioning up until 2017, when it was finally announced to the public. But there also is a possibility that it's still going on. It seems like There's always a little sliver of some kind of a government study still trying to collect information about UFOs. The reason why the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program is also pertinent to what's going on today is that the information in the announcement about its existence was publicly released at the end of 2017. Since then, news organizations have been trying to figure out exactly what it was and what kind of results it was getting. And it is the catalyst to what we're seeing now in June. As a response to the late program's public presentation, the website Politico asked to interview with the Navy and determined the following. So I'm quoting from the body of the article, which goes, "The U.S. Navy is drafting new guidelines for pilots and other personnel to report encounters with unidentified aircraft." Continuing on with the quote, it goes into that there is a stigma associated with military staff personnel trying to kind of talk about these weird things that they've been seeing, because it's, as the quote goes, a significant new step in creating a formal process to collect and analyze the unexplained sightings and destigmatize them. The previously unreported move is in response to a series of sightings of unknown, highly advanced aircraft intruding on Navy strike groups and other sensitive military formations and facilities. The service says, to be clear, the Navy isn't endorsing the idea that its sailors have encountered alien spacecraft, but it is acknowledging there have been enough strange aerial sightings by credible and highly trained military personnel that they need to be recorded in the official record and studied, rather than dismissed as some kooky phenomena from the realm of science fiction. And that was back in April when this report was released. So this interview came back in April, and then it's just kind of, again, been this string of different news organizations coming to the government and different federal branches to talk about this new interest or re-interest in UFOs. So I'm going to ask you, Mom, do you think UFOs are real?
I love the idea of the conspiracies and things like that. And I think that's probably more what I definitely think, that if there is something, it's probably made up,
Yeah.
But if you were just to ask me personally, do I believe that aliens and UFOs are real? No. But that doesn't mean that there isn't something out there that's been made by man.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think UFOs are real, but I don't think, like the president, I don't think they have an extraterrestrial kind of connection with them. I think they are definitely secret aircraft that have been documented. So, like, going through all these notes, I started trying to look up, different secret aircraft that have been declassified over time to see if they actually had any connection or report with UFO sightings. And a lot of the time, these secret UFO ships happen to be not just enemy ships, like how the government currently is trying to look and see if, for national security reasons, if there's anything there. But it typically turns out to be possibly our own craft that they don't want to be talking about. And I found a specific facility in Burbank, California, that's owned by Lockheed Martin, where a lot of secret planes have been manufactured. And it's called Skunk Works. Apparently, the person, I think his name is Kelly. It's either his last or first name. But Kelly said that he wanted to be working on new experimental aircraft with smaller team members who were very good engineers and designers, and he just wanted to make the best of the best experimental aircraft. So Lockheed Martin said, okay, you can do your little plan, but you're going to be doing it in a circus tent. And so they were placed into a very hot and smelly circus tent. And apparently one of the staff members used to read this comic where they would bring up a certain location where skunks would make beverages that were really stinky, you know? And it was called Skunk Works. So that's what the facility was eventually named after. And they got like a really cute skunk. It's not quite Pepe Le Pew, but you know, it's kind of got that same sassiness to it.
Very fitting for them.
I know, right? And Skunk Works ended up designing important stealth airplanes for reconnaissance and targeted attack systems. Some of the planes you probably actually know if you think about, stealthy planes, they're black and angular and all that. That's what the Skunk Works was producing. They produced Lockheed F-117 Nighthawk, which was a ground attack stealth plane that kind of, in my mind, I envision it as looking like a sparrow. And it's got very close wings. It kind of looks like a big triangle. And again, it's very angular.
Yeah, well, the stealth fighters are originally designed to basically be invisible so they could not be seen by radar.
Right.
And that was the shape and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to kind of mention when you were done was the UFOs sightings and stuff. You know, if I saw something that flew over me, and I know it was near a base, but still something like that flying over that looks like
something totally
black
unconventional
condor or something like that, you know, then I probably would like question it too. What am I seeing? But once again, because I just think the government designed so many things that we aren't aware of, you know, that I guess to me, I wouldn't think anything of it because when I've been in Vegas, there are so many weird things I've seen in that sky. And I'm not going to go up to someone and say, I think I just saw a UFO, you know, because I just know about all the testing that they do around there. And I could only imagine if you lived there, like what you would see. But also in Burbank, you know, because it really is known for a lot of the testing out there too. And you know, and it, like even when they first did supersonic jets and tested them, could you imagine what people thought of the sonic booms, you know?
Oh man.
And the explosions that they would have heard, or just even with you with San Diego last year, the picture that you sent me of this weird thing going by, and it was just a regular space launch.
Yeah, it was what was it, SpaceX or something like that? And the rocket was going, and it's like, okay, there's a giant missile-looking like thing coming our way. It doesn't look quite right.
And it didn't look like the launches here in Florida, but that was because they said the trajectory going out over the Pacific was so different. But yeah, I mean, there were so many reports, you know, and people pulled over on the highway when that went by and thinking there were these weird things in the sky. And once again, maybe it's because we've grown up in Florida and we've just seen so many rockets and other things, and we hear sonic booms all the time. I don't think about it, but I mean, I guess I could see where people, and well, even what you sent me, if I didn't know that was a rocket, I would have been like, wow, that's a weird picture of something really weird in the sky. So
there was actually, when I was looking up for this episode and talking about what are phenomena associated with UFOs, you know, these secretive planes, you got ball lightning, things like that. But there was a case of, I think it was Norway. I want to say Norway, where it's reported that a missile was just a little bit off on its like kind of telegraphy, you know, the way it basically finds its way to whatever destination it is. It made this really freaky but very beautiful looking photo where you have like rays of white light coming out from a circular, you know, like in a radial direction, but right in the middle there's a spiral of blue going through, and honestly that looked UFO. It was very pretty, but it looked like UFO. Going back to Skunk Works and some of the other secretive planes that they've done, they've also worked on Lockheed U-2, nicknamed the Dragon Lady. It was a reconnaissance gathering plane that could take photos from high altitudes. And I think the one that most people are familiar with, even just by looking at it, is the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird. Some fun facts to throw at you because this is a very impressive jet. It is the fastest air-breathing jet that we know of. I don't know, there might be others going on right now in testing, but it reached a top speed of 2,200 miles per hour,
Wow.
which is higher than Mach 3. It is faster than any enemy missile at the time, which was around the 70s and the 80s. No, 60s and 70s, I believe it is. But because it was faster than any missile, its job was to go into wherever it was going to be doing reconnaissance and would be taking photos from below. Now, its top speed was 2,200 miles, but it would not always be at that speed, right? Because it needs to be efficient and be able to reach its location and be able to take several photographs if needed. But if it were ever detected, and I read somewhere that it had been detected at least 1,000 times, missiles would be sent up, and as soon as they saw the missiles were coming, they would just put it on full throttle and laugh as they were leaving everything behind them. So I was finding in certain archived articles in 1980s where it was proven that secret experimental aircraft would be flown at night, so they wouldn't be as readily seen by the American public. But of course, that kind of didn't really help out in certain circumstances. There's still a lot of commercial flights that were flying at night, and they could go ahead and see like a giant black object that was much higher than them. Traditionally, commercial air flights would be, at this point in era, maybe about 20,000 feet versus like 30,000 feet nowadays. But the experimental aircraft could get as high as around 50,000. So they're like, there's a really big thing up there, and it's something I've never seen before when it comes to a jet. So, there's that. And I think this is pretty funny. So the reason why we kind of know that commercial flights and people with a number of pilots and other just civilians could see these planes, the CIA admits that high-altitude testing of the U-2 soon led to an unexpected side effect, a tremendous increase in reports of unidentified flying objects. And so remember that I was talking about the Project Blue Book, right?
Yeah.
Well, the CIA also admits that some of the cases, they say about like most half of the cases that were done in the Project Blue Book were actually because people had seen the flights of the U-2 by the CIA during this period. But when they were asked, the Air Force would go ahead and ask the CIA to help them out on this. And the CIA would, but they couldn't really explain, like, hey, that's our own aircraft, because they needed to keep it secret. There's still a lot of dispute, actually, to the claim of the CIA different flight tests being part of the Project Blue Book. And the reason why is that the Project Blue Book had actually started several years before the U-2 was even around. So it's kind of like a lot of people are suggesting that the CIA is trying to cover up something else, maybe like real UFOs, by just explaining it away as, oh yeah, it's our own aircraft. And probably the thing that is closest when it comes to US government funded projects related to UFOs is Project 1794. And it is what you are picturing if you're thinking of little green men and flying saucers. It was commissioned by the United States government and with an unnamed Canadian manufacturer in the article I was reading. And it was ambitious. It was supposed to be able to hover to extreme heights of over 100,000 feet, reach speeds of Mach 4, which is more than the fastest jet that we just talked about, the Blackbird. And all this technology was also supposed to fit inside of a shell that looked exactly like what ufologists are looking for today. Something that is flattened with a brim saucer and a bulging centralized capsule. So, Project 1794 was rejected after flights could only reach about 5 feet off the ground. And the disappointing results of the flight, coupled with a large manufacturing cost, led to the demise of this aircraft's future.
But then that would not prove anyone who, quote, thought they saw that flying
That's
in the
true.
air. I mean, now that if pictures emerged, that were either declassified or not declassified but leaked, then I guess they could think of it as that's what they see as crashed, and that's just what they think UFOs look like. But they wouldn't have ever seen anything like that in the sky then.
Yeah. But I wanted to bring up the story. Do you remember when I was younger and for science fair, you helped me make a hovercraft?
Yes.
It didn't hover 5 feet above, but it did get some good air. It moved around, all that.
We definitely were flying.
Yeah. And that was a lot of fun.
I'm surprised you actually do remember it.
I remember not doing any of the work. I remember just seeing you outside work on a giant, vacuum sealable kind of thing in the yard.
Yeah. Cutting the big wood circle. But yeah, that looked like what people would typically think of a UFO.
Yeah.
Minus probably the top because we had to sit on it, but...
And let me tell you, it was fun. And the kids at my school really liked it.
We'll have to make another one.
We could. Maybe when I have a kid, we can do it.
Yeah, we'll have to think of that.
So to kind of wrap up this whole World UFO Day, the World UFO Day website tries to explain what you should do to celebrate, right? And I thought it was really cute that they should say, you can celebrate by decorating frisbees up as flying saucers and then playing catch with them. So that's what I suggest for this
You could
day.
launch it at night over someone's backyard.
You have to put lights on it too. Yeah. Maybe little army green men that you can do with parachutes. You have them be able to expel from the saucer.
Roswell is one of my bucket list things. And last time I was out in Vegas, I don't think you were with me on that trip. And over Henderson, I believe it's Henderson, Nevada, where the Hoover Dam is. And they've got this little shop that's all, based on the aliens in Roswell and Area 51 and stuff like that. And they have this big alien you can take a picture outside and then post it on Instagram and stuff like that. But so last time I was out there for a convention, it was just a regular work convention, but I'd heard of these Janet flights, and I think I've discussed that with you a little bit. And they were, I think, more declassified or really, really hidden, but now it's kind of out there and people know about it. And we're pretty sure that we saw some of them because they were supposed to be like white airplanes with red stripes and stuff, but that they ferry the civilian workers to the base, basically, to keep it as secretive as they can on the base. And so that was kind of interesting, but it's right out there in front of you. But I think a lot of the UFO stuff comes from the fact that there isn't the transparency, and there is so much secrecy around it. And just like that, a long time ago, why couldn't you talk about that there was a service that took people to the base? I mean, that's not a big deal. You've got to get the workers to the base, and if it's far enough away and they need to fly them, then that shouldn't be a secret thing out there, basically. And I guess because there hasn't been transparency in the past, when they are secretive, it just adds more of an allure to that, not necessarily conspiracy, but mystery and just the fun to the mystery. I think that's what I like about, the conspiracies is more the fun of it rather than, really believing in the conspiracy. But like I said, when I was in Vegas, I mean, there were just some bizarre things in the sky, but I didn't think anything other than they're just probably testing out things.
Yeah, sure.
So I think it's fascinating, and they do bring up the fact that if aliens were really to exist and our government knows about it. The reason that they would keep it as a secret would be because of mass panic, which probably, yeah, probably would happen. So, but it's just so much secrecy and everything, you don't know what to think. And I think that just adds to it, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, so we need to make a hovercraft again, but that's not going to be done by World UFO Day.
No, but we can do the Frisbee.
Yeah, we could do the Frisbee. And I guess we're actually going to be traveling to Canada here soon in a few days, but I guess we'll still be here in Florida for that.
Yeah,
so,
July 2nd.
Yeah, so we can go toss that around and make some people freak out thinking there's a UFO going by.
I don't know how convincing we'll be with these. Put some tinfoil on it.
Tinfoil. We can make tinfoil hats. See? That's another thing we could do on UFO Day.
All right.
Tinfoil hats.
Yep. That is the goal now.
Yeah. Okay, so I have the next one.
Okay, yeah.
And it's Compliment Your Mirror Day.
Oh, so we're going to the occult, right?
Yeah, but not quite yet. I mean, that's not the reason it was originally made. So.
Okay.
But yes, I do have a creepy story in my research that I found. I found a lot of creepy things because, kind of jumping ahead here, but it seems like every story I found, whether it was good or creepy, bad, all centered around souls somehow. It didn't matter the culture, race, whatever, it was all related to souls. So that was very interesting. But not necessarily all occult. It wasn't all bad. So,
all right.
Okay, so this is July 2nd. So 2 days again, like last time. We're celebrating 2 days, or 2 holidays on the same day, I should say. So I guess the funniest thing that I discovered when looking up the facts was there's actually a website called mirrorhistory.com.
Okay.
I don't know how they came about or why they came about, but boy, they sure had a lot of facts on mirrors. So
they know their subject.
Yeah, so that made it kind of easy for me to find some of these. So, okay, so talking about the day first. It isn't really what you would think, you know. It's kind of like, oh, I get to look in the mirror and oh, look how pretty I am, or this or that. It actually is more kind of on these almost positive thinking seminars and things like that, where they tell you, you know, take a piece of paper and write 10 things that you really like about yourself, and then maybe put it up on your mirror. So every morning when you're brushing your teeth, you look at that and it reaffirms it. And, you know, before you go out and do speeches or just conquer the day, they also say, you know, pick a phrase and say it to yourself in the mirror, because, you know, you're reaffirming it to yourself.
Sure.
So it really is about positivity and more than like vainness or even looking at yourself. It's just that more positive thing about self-awareness and self-affirmation.
That's a nice way to actually look at this type of holiday.
Yeah, but, you know, looking at just the title of Compliment Your Mirror Day, it isn't totally where your brain would go at all.
Yeah, no, I was definitely thinking of the vein.
Yeah, I know. But it really is just complimenting you as yourself and your accomplishments and what you've done. So thinking about that, there's different things that they've done with mirrors on kind of that aspect or whatever. So there's actually a blog movement out there, and a group of bloggers that are doing mirror fasting.
So let me guess. They are people who are going to go without looking at themselves for a certain amount of time.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's some of them are doing it for basically a year. And I don't still quite understand how they can do it. I mean, you know, they said that they can't avoid all the reflections out there anymore.
Like in glass.
Yeah, because pretty much, you know, anywhere you go, in a car, a subway, just anywhere, there's reflections anymore. It didn't used to be that way. We didn't have tons of buildings around and stuff.
Is that the time when do they just like go outside and as they're walking they're like, oh, I can actually look at my hair and zhuzh it up?
Well, see, that's the thing they never really explained, because I would think that I go without makeup quite a bit, but most women that's not the case, and it's just kind of like okay, you have to do that. Guys would have to shave. And there's just things, is there something in my teeth? I would have to keep asking you or someone, if I couldn't look in a mirror. Um, so I just kind of found that interesting. And so they went to basically the experts on, like vainness and over obsessing on your looks and stuff like that. And I didn't write down the statistic. It was some crazy amount that like women look in the mirror 83 times a day and men look at least 18 times a day and stuff like that. It was very bizarre. But they actually said that the mirror fasting could be doing the opposite because it's still focusing so much on looks or not looks.
Okay, so it's not going to negate anything. It's going to heighten.
Right. So it's the fact that the people that look way too much in are obsessed already.
Sure.
And now it's an obsession the other way. And so they said it's really not going to change people's perspective or give them a new lease on life or anything like that. So I found that extremely interesting. It's just a small group that was doing that. And they kind of going along with that, this is a myth that was debunked. Till I researched this recently, I always assumed and thought, because I had heard this, but the Amish, I was always told the Amish don't have mirrors. Right?
Really?
Because they aren't supposed to be vain and all of that. And so one of the people reached out to an Amish friend and she said, well, yeah, we do have mirrors because, the guys do have to shave and we do have to do our hair and things like that. But she said that we don't do it for vanity purposes.
It's
So,
very practical
yes.
and utilitarian.
Yeah, so it's functional, practical, and that's it. You look at it maybe in the morning and then again at night for getting ready or something. But she said that, yeah, that's total myth that culture doesn't have that. And the reason I even found that was I thought, okay, well, if I talk about the Amish, I'm going to find other cultures that maybe don't use mirrors.
Okay, yeah.
So I did research. The Amish weren't even coming up because I put in like cultures that don't use mirrors and nothing was coming up. So I finally just put in, are Amish allowed to use mirrors or something like that? But it was kind of funny because I guess everyone uses a mirror. And it may not be, once again, you've got the obsessed vain people, but other people just use it for the practical purpose.
Yeah.
But they also have done self-recognition experiments with kids to see when they can recognize themselves in the mirror. And they did this across a bunch of cultures. And they're trying to say kind of third world cultures don't recognize themselves as much.
Oh, boy.
But it was such a stupid experiment. Because most experiments, they put like a red X on the kid's forehead.
Yeah.
And hope that they would see that in the mirror and then want it off of them, realizing it was on them. And it's like, okay, if someone just came up and marked a red X on my forehead, I don't have to see it to go, I want this thing off of me.
Yeah, or like, why do you even want it off of you? Sometimes it's like, okay, it's there, so what?
And I mean, I guess the whole idea was, well, if they went for the mirror and touched it, then they wouldn't recognize it themselves. But if they touched their own forehead, they would recognize it. And then was it India? There was another culture they did, and it got hardly any of the kids' self-recognition, but they did it with post-it notes on their forehead. And the same thing, if you come up and I'm a little kid and you stick a post-it note on my forehead, I'm probably going to rip it off no matter what, without looking at the mirror.
Maybe they should be trying to do this a different way.
Yeah, so it was a very, very weird recognition study. I mean, I think it's kind of cool to see, if like a cat, when they look at it, are they recognizing it's them? When do kids actually recognize it's them? But
is there a specific time? I think I've heard about that, like 2 years or 3 years old.
Well, so the 2-3 years, we'll get into a little bit more because we're getting ahead of it, but that might be, I mean, it could be because of the studies, but it also could be because there were cultures that believed that babies up to 2 and 3 years old should not look in a mirror because their souls weren't fully developed and could be stolen by the mirror. So, so like I said, it goes definitely back to souls and all these cultures and stuff. And
guess you better have a soul instead of being self-aware.
So it could possibly be that number stuck in your head because maybe it's something you've heard on that, or it could just be because they There has been a study saying it's more 2 3 years old.
Mhm.
Everywhere. I don't know. But I think nowadays, once again, because glass windows and other things that probably kids are exposed a lot earlier and probably realize a lot quicker than maybe in the past.
Like, who is that outside? Oh, wait, it's me inside.
I mean, you hand a kid a phone, a cell phone nowadays as early as probably 2 to show them maybe a cartoon or something, and they're going to see their face
Yeah,
reflecting it.
that's true.
The same thing with the computers, and with, I mean, I guess a lot of people still do Netflix on TVs and all, but I bet a lot of kids more are watching it on laptops, in a doctor's office while they're waiting or something. They're going to see the reflections in that. So. But so I just thought those were some interesting studies because the whole blogger thing, it's like I don't understand how you can go about that anyway because of practicality. And
Right.
then, like they said, the experts said it just was not, it did not do what they wanted it to. And then the self-recognition as well. But mirrors, they believe, have been around since 6000 BC. So definitely have been out there for a long time. The modern mirrors that we think of probably started in either 16th century or in the 1800s.
Okay.
But the original 6000 BC, do you know how they probably made a mirror or what it was made out of?
I might be getting it confused with the more modern mirrors, but didn't they put some kind of like metal behind whatever the glossy surface is? And it was like a green color and it can...
So that is definitely the more modern
Okay,
ones.
okay.
And even like, the antiques that we have out in the living room, that big mirror that we have is from the 1800s when the new technique kind of would have come into play. I mean, the 16th century they had
16th century?
the 16th century was tin mercury, so it was closer to what our modern ones were, but the true modern ones were 1835.
Okay.
And that's what you're kind of describing and what
Okay.
we think of. But no, back in 6000 BC, they believed that it was probably water in vessels
Okay.
or polished stone. And a lot of times they used obsidian, the black from
Stone.
from the lava,
Yeah.
the overheated lava, or polished metals. But probably real early, the 6000 BC was more with the polished stone and the water in the vessels. So, so getting back to the 16th century, it was actually in Venice that the little bit more modern ones came about. And do you know why it would have been Venice?
Because there was a lot of travel. I don't know.
So it goes along with one of the islands that we visited while we were there.
Murano?
Yeah, Murano. So the glass and the glass makers there. But in 1835, like I mentioned, a German inventor coated it with the silver. So that's kind of how you were talking about. That's glass with this pressure like coated silver on the back.
Okay, so it's silver that's on the back.
Yeah.
Okay, continue. Yeah.
And so like, our antique out there probably needs to be re-silverized because it's having those places kind of show up and the old places and stuff like that. But so that's the more modern one, and pretty much, I mean, they refined the process and done a little bit different, but that's really how they're made today and what we think of based on that silver. So some more things about it. They talked about how certain places will have mirrors and certain places won't. And Disney, if you go in their bathrooms, is lacking pretty much mirrors that people think. You usually walk over to the sink and there's a mirror. But they said that it was for 2 different reasons. Because you can't have security cameras in bathrooms, obviously. They said that it just helps a little bit with vandalism. No one can break the mirror or draw on it or whatever, so
Okay.
they don't have as many mirrors. But they also just said because of the high traffic nature of their bathrooms at the theme parks,
Yeah.
You'll have someone that they've just sweated off especially in the women's room. I can't speak to probably the men's as much, but, we'll have someone who just sweated off all their makeup, or they just ate an ice cream and they want to touch up their makeup. So people are coming out of the bathroom. They want to get back, they said, to the magic, and they just won't wash their hands and go. And these people are hogging the sinks because of the mirrors. So I assuming this is the same as the guys, I don't know, but and it's not just Disney. Disney probably started the trend, I'm sure, but most of the bathrooms, you'll notice there's one. I've seen this at the airports too. One huge mirror, like when you enter
Right,
and
yeah.
exit, pretty much. And so they said it really was more for traffic flow because that way people could use the sinks and leave if they didn't need to look in the mirror. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
There's a whole book and study that I did on Disney, and like, it's amazing what they think, and this is why they're Disney and why they're top notch. They think of every little detail and things like that for traffic flow. And so another thing that they do is their trash cans are, I think it's only 10 steps or 10 feet in between each trash can, because they actually like timed how long it takes someone to unwrap an ice cream bar or a candy bar or whatever.
Yeah.
And if they don't have it right there, then someone might litter more. But, if there's one right there, they'll toss it. So it's kind of interesting, all the studies that they've done on traffic control. But I never knew mirrors was part of that. So some of the weird, I don't want to get to the weird things yet, because I kind of want to go, since that all goes into each other. But mirrors have shown up a lot, definitely, in pop culture, in movies, in writing, in books, and different things. So it's what are some of the ones that you can think of, like either movies or books or...
Mirror, mirror on the wall.
Of course, I would think that's probably the biggest one that people think of.
I can't think of any other specific one. I mean, okay, Alice in Wonderland would be another.
Okay, yeah,
because
that's
of the
on their
looking
list.
glass.
Yes, exactly. So Lewis Carroll's 1871 book, Through the Looking Glass, has one of the most beloved magical mirrors in modern literature. And in there, that's one of the ones that's kind of, I think, divided, because it's a neat world and a fun world behind it, but then there are some scary things behind it too.
Yeah.
But, it's not totally all bad.
No.
So.
It's just different. It's opposite, right?
So some of the others that they listed, the novel The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde revolves around a magical mirror that has the form of a picture that reflects only the true aged visage of the forever young protagonist. So, series of Harry Potter books. They definitely have several magical mirror devices.
They do, yeah.
Numerous tabletop RPG games have rule sets that enable mirrors to be used for magical effects. So a lot of these are leaning towards more spells and that
Wizardry.
otherworldly, wizardly occult, things like that. So, but once again, there's some fun ones too. J.R.R. Tolkien's 1954 epic fantasy, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, features magical mirror in the form of the small pool of water. So that would kind of go back to the original thinking. William Shakespeare's 1595 stage play, Richard II, popularized the myth that breaking a mirror can bring misfortune.
Okay.
So talking about that, the breaking of the mirror, we tend to hear, I think, 7 years bad luck, right? That's like the main thing that we hear. So that was based on a Roman thought. And the Romans back then thought that your soul regenerated after 7 years. So it didn't go away, but that every 7 years you had a different soul, basically.
Okay.
Or, just reformed. Same soul, but it kind of reformed. So if you broke the mirror, that soul is now...
corrupted.
Yeah, corrupted. Broken.
Okay.
So it won't regenerate again for its 7 years.
So
that's kind of where that came from. Dracula. In 1897, the novel Dracula by Bram Stoker, the modern fiction has adopted the myth that mirrors do not cast reflections of vampires. Yeah. And I know there's one other thing that's not supposed to be reflected in the mirrors, but once again, it goes all back to that souls. And it's all about the reason that the vampires are not reflected is supposedly they don't have a soul.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I didn't really think about it through, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, so everything led back to that theme of souls, no matter what it was based on, if it was fictional, if it was real, what culture it was. That was very interesting. So there are a lot more references to different, novels and things like that. But what I kind of want to get into, so getting into the creepiness.
Spooky time.
Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is black mirrors. And
Not the Netflix show?
no, not the Netflix show. So black mirrors, I guess, have been popular for a while, and at these, we have a town called Casadega near us, and it's all kind of spiritualists and fortune
New
tellers,
Age,
and and all that. And so there's also a lot of conventions just around the world, obviously, with that attract all the people. And they sell their wares there. And so one thing they tout is this black mirror, or dark mirror. And that basically it's the modern version of the crystal ball.
Okay.
So you can conjure up people and see things in it if you do it the right way and all that. So this it's such a cool website. With all of our weirdness and unboxing the bizarre, our family business and all, you would think I would have come across this before, but I have not. And it's it's so bad that I did not write it down. Week, I thought I'd written it down. It's like weekoftheweird.com, and it is all about these just oddities and stuff, things that you would kind of think about. Ripley's Believe It or Not and all. But because of their business, they acquire a lot of artifacts, not because they go out looking for them, but people just kind of dump them off on them. So because they acquired so many artifacts, they decided to make this traveling museum of oddities and the occult, basically. And they go around with their, they'll pack up, not necessarily all the things all the time. They'll pick things to pack up. But very interesting story that came in because they came upon a dark mirror that was given to them, and they take it around and they tell the history first to, basically say it's up to your own risk if you look in it and everything. But it basically, how they acquired it was there was this lady whose mother decided that she was going to go to one of these expos, and it was just lined with stuff to buy, and she decided that she'd buy this black mirror and that she would see what she could do to conjure things up. And I guess she really was into black magic and the occult, because they called it, let me see if I have it in the notes here. I don't know if this is right pronunciation because I'm not into the occult at all, but scrying, Scrying.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. So basically conjuring up things,
Right.
in that mirror. And so this lady had realized that her mom became more withdrawn from the family, was just not herself. She was answering the phone. She wasn't doing anything. And she was like scared all the time and this and that. And so eventually she kind of attributed it maybe to the mirror, but didn't fully attribute that her mom was kind of going crazy or whatever this way because of the mirror. But one day she was finally like, I've got to go to her house. And the mirror was packed away deep in a closet with a black veil over it. And I guess the daughter asked about why it was hidden and like that. And she said, it's evil. So she removed it from the house.
Yeah.
And it ended up with this guy in his museum. And he said, he took it home, didn't think anything of it. He just kind of put it out with his other oddities. And he said that most of the things he gets, he's told the story that's haunted and all, but it never makes an appearance for him. So he had this painting, and it just doesn't work for him, And he said, but a lot of things, things come out at night, or they're mischievous and they only want to show off to people, certain people or whatever. So
they like the entertainment.
Yeah. So, he just kind of brushes it off and leaves it there. I think he even packed it away for a while, but he decided that, he'd pull it out and take it to one of these expos or wherever he was invited to bring his museum to. And so he told the whole history about it. And most of the people were like, I'm not touching that thing. No way. I'm not looking at that thing. And this one lady said, yeah. And she picked it up. and she stumbled backwards and just like, I guess fear gripped her face and she let out like a scream or something like that. And they asked her what'd she see, and she said she saw herself as a rotting corpse.
Ooh.
And so then there were a lot of Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and the Cult. So I don't have the website, but that's what it's called. So he said that there were very similar. Everyone that would pick this up that didn't hear like the last person would see very similar things. And they would all be based on them, or like distortions of them, or weird things
Like
of them.
grotesque images of yourself, and that's
but then one person did say one time they saw something over their shoulder and stuff. But and so it was creepy enough for her to see her corpse. And this was her actual quote: "I saw my own decomposing corpse looking back at me. That's a dark mirror. I should not have done that. I need to go say a prayer."
Yeah.
So, so it's like, yeah, he's like, well, when these people are saying that, and this and that, but he said, I guess we had to redo our disclaimer. And so here it goes back to reports of strange visions, warping faces, general sense of dread were pouring in. There was a lady who actually, I guess, put her hand on the mirror, and her handprint stayed there. No matter what she did to wipe it off, would not come off until she threatened the mirror that she was going to break it, and then it disappeared. But they said the problem was it got more violent.
Oh, okay.
It didn't physically per se do anything to anyone, but there were some cases where finally, I didn't write them all down, but one of them was a lady looked into it. She didn't see anything, but all of a sudden it felt like her mouth was filling up with blood and tasted like blood.
Ooh.
So they said that it started to started manifesting in physical ways instead of just scary visions. So they took it back, and they kept it in their living room for a while with the other things. But then they said all of a sudden that haunted painting really did become haunted. And other things, they said the bad apple spoiled the bunch.
Yeah.
So they packed it away and put his veil on, and they didn't say never to be seen again. They'll take it, some things, but they really did believe it was creepy and evil as well. Anyway, so they actually entitled that as like the scariest mirror story.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, and they had pictures of it. So when I was going through his blog and like trying to research and write down all these things, I'm like, I don't want to look at it.
You were trying to stay away.
I know. I was like trying to go really fast past these pictures because I'm like, am I going to see something creepy in the pictures? So that was a little weird to me. So anyway. But so celebrating, I guess it depends. If you are not afraid of mirrors, then go ahead and look at yourself all you want in the mirror, but affirm yourself. So write down some great things to say to yourself in the mirror every morning. If you don't like mirrors, then keep them covered up.
Or you're fasting. You don't need the mirror if you're just reaffirming what you know to be true about yourself.
Yeah. So, anyway.
So this is wrapping up part A of a 2-part episode for the beginning part to July. Part B, it came out the same day as today. So you can go ahead and continue on. Thanks again for joining us. Thank you for joining us in our hop through these silly and strange celebrations. We'll be back again in 2 weeks with another assortment of holidays to inspire new traditions.
You can follow us at Don't Tell the Easter Bunny on Facebook and Instagram, or Don't Tell the EAS1 on Twitter. And for emails, you can use Don't Tell the Easter Bunny at gmail.com. See you next time.